Okay, we're gonna get started here in just a minute. If you're here and your sound is turned on, please feel free to let me know what the music level is like, if I need to turn it down or turn it up. Alrighty. Hello. Welcome. The purpose of this stream is two parts. One, I'm getting some practice in. It's actually three parts. I'm practicing. I'm getting practice speaking about what I'm doing while I'm practicing, which is very difficult for me. And I'm hoping to use this, the recording of this stream, as sort of supplementary for my students, since I teach a painting class and we don't always have a lot of time. We don't always have a lot of time to talk about like all the nitty-gritties of drawing and sketching and how a drawing and sketching practice is a really important part of painting. So I'm kind of trying to kill three birds with one stone here and just record some of my sketching practice to share with my students and also anyone who's here. Lyndon, yes. I totally know what you mean. My attention span is suffering from this Saturday morning. I had just asked if from anyone who's here and has their sound turned on, if the music is too loud. Anytime, just let me know if it should turn down or not. Okay, so the idea here, I'm kind of trying out something new, is I'm going to be warming up with just a couple kind of, I don't know if I want to call them gestures exactly, but kind of like gestural faces, and then I'll go into some more in-depth drawings, sort of with full shading and whatnot. I'm going to try to prevent myself from spending too much time on any one face, because the goal of this is to work quick and to do those, like, kind of practice those initial phases of the drawing, rather than get sucked into the teeny little itty-bitty details, which I love, personally. So that's the idea here. I'm also inviting anyone who wants to follow along to do so. So I will, for the first section, when I'm doing quick gestures for, like, I'm probably going to time myself, I'm just going to be using some faces from Pinterest. You can see that in the corner already. And I'll just be using, I'll have the face in the corner. You can see it. You can follow along if you want. When I get into the more in-depth drawings, I will, if I remember, and if I can figure out how to pin a message in chat, I will link the URL to that image. Everything's coming from Pinterest. I'll link the URL to that in chat so that if you want to follow along or do your own thing or whatever, or just be drawing with me, you are invited and very much encouraged to do so. So do things your own way, for sure, but I'll just tell you what I'm working with. I am going to do most of today with a 9B pencil. This is a really, really soft pencil. Makes lots of nice smudgy marks. Very dark, tends to break a whole lot. I think there's probably a secret to not breaking your pencils, but I don't know what it is. I also sometimes, not much on this paper. Hang on, rewind. Sorry, wrong pen. I sometimes use these teeny tiny little erasers, so you can see that makes a pretty small eraser mark. This is a Tombow Mono Zero. You can see that. This one is I don't even know how to pronounce that. FACTIS BM2. It's a little bit bigger than this one. I use these 2 erasers and also this big guy right here. And my favorite, a kneaded eraser. This one gets a lot of mileage. And then of course a pencil sharpener. That's what this guy is. So those are the main things I'm using. Later on I might end up pulling out some charcoal as well. Here's my like really fancy high-tech charcoal box you can see here, where I have some of the same stuff. I'll be using some of this vine or willow charcoal. I don't actually know if there's a difference between vine and willow charcoal. It does the same job for me, which is that it makes a really nice... One, it shatters really easily, but it makes this really nice, soft, dusty kind of mark, like so, which is really quite easy to lift, relatively speaking. So, I use some of that charcoal, and then I'll also often use charcoal that's compressed. It's in a pencil form. It's still a pretty soft charcoal, but it makes a very dark line, and it's very smudgeable. Amazing. So I'll be using some charcoal later on, maybe some other things, IDK, but if you want to have some materials of your own and you want to grab anything to match that, you are invited to do so. Just gonna get rid of that. So I also have a piece of, this is just regular, what do we even call this stuff? Newsprint. It's a rough newsprint that I probably picked out of a dumpster somewhere. Because I only have a couple pages of it. And the other pages have child scribbles on them. I'm going to use that just for my warm-ups, and then I'm going to switch over to my sketchbook with kind of a rough, it's a very thick paper, like so. Very thick paper, kind of a medium rough surface. That's the idea. Okay. I think I'm just stalling at this point. I'll do my best to describe what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, but if you've been to any of my streams before, you know that sometimes doesn't work out. So, best of luck. I'm going to pick out a couple faces, and I'm going to do, let's say, 3-minute quick gesture heads. So just kind of getting the planes of the face down without having any of the extraneous detail. And I'm going to try to stick to my 3 minutes. So here, let's see if I can put my timer up. The nice thing about streaming publicly is that it kind of keeps me honest. So I can't just reset my timer. Okay. So I'm gonna put this right here, like that. Yeah. And then I'm gonna pick out one of my faces here. So I just have this linked to my browser window, my Pinterest browser window. I keep a what do you call a pin collection folder, whatever, board, that's it. A board where I just toss faces that I find on Pinterest. You can't see everything on the board right now because I have the window in the upper right. I have it kind of trimmed down a little bit, so you can't see everything that I'm seeing, but I will try to sort of rearrange things so that it's visible. Let's see. Let's start off with this person right here. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the, let's see if you can see this. I'm going to keep the screen small. So something I find really, really helpful with getting those main, like the big angles of the face, the big planes of it, is to have my reference photo be like pretty small. If the reference photo is big, it's a lot harder for me to estimate the distance between features and planes. So having that photo be like relatively small on my screen when I'm starting out really, really helps. It can also help me from getting too wrapped up in the details too early. So I just need to tweak this a little bit so that y'all can see which photo I'm working with. Let's see, can I do this? No, that didn't work. Hang on a second. I'm trying to figure out how I can do this without, like... Oh, I'm so dumb. Okay, here we go. Just move it. So I'll just move whichever one I'm working into the center. There we go. Okay. Here we go. And then I will set my timer, and I'll try to describe more or less what I'm doing. Wake up, wake up, wake up. And what's my spot? Here will work right here. I'm gonna do it kind of small, and let's go. Okay, so I'm working with the person in the middle, and I'm usually gonna start off. I sort of have like this bastardized version between Loomis and the Riley method. Loomis heads are really useful for kind of understanding generic proportions of a face, but I find that it can be a little bit constraining at a certain point. So figure out where the ears are here, go like that. We got the nose right about the same level. There we go. I might need to elongate that chin a bit. And we got mouth. We have, so once I mark off about where the ears are here, then I can start placing features relative to them. So there's my midline. Brows up here. Spectacular brows on this person. And I'm not really supposed to be erasing, but... And we have the hairline about here, and the hair kind of comes up here. So, and then for the nose, we're gonna have pretty much just a triangle, and for the mouth, we have top lip, bottom lip for the eyes, about here, lid. Connect those brows. I usually use triangular shapes to kind of show where the brows are. Or what shape the brows make. Not really thinking too much about like the fine shapes of shadows. I want to get a sense of the big shapes that the shadow makes, and also a sense of what's, so the Riley method is all about rhythms in the face. And so that's going to be stuff like this. You have to start off by making your subject look like an old person, because it puts these lines kind of all over the face. But as you start working through this, it helps to show the flow of features and keep things kind of connected. So cheekbones, put those ears back. Ears, I'm on my final minute here, like so. And I'm just really showing where the eyes are. We're gonna get like weird kind of cat eyes with this method. Oop, and there's my timer, and there we go. Okay, move on to the next one. I didn't really get to the neck there. I probably should have. Okay, so next one I'm gonna try to get to the neck too. My bad habit, personally, is that I tend to go too soon for the, like the details, and so I'll start putting the nose, and I'll be like, yeah, it looks about right. Let me start putting little shadows on the side of the nose. I'm not supposed to do that. So help keep me honest here. And I'm gonna do my best to, again, stick to big shapes, and this is particularly important with warm up. So let's see, next face. And I'm gonna come back to some of these faces and do more detailed drawings of them. but I'm gonna start off with another one that's relatively straightforward. Straight on faces tend to be kind of the easiest to start with, and then the 3/4 views and profile views are sort of the next. Let's see, what are we looking at? I've given myself really a lot of 3/4 views. That's fine, we'll do a 3/4 view. Here we go. So this guy's in the hot seat now. And next 3-minute let's go. All right, this guy. So we have really significant draw there. The ear right around here. Neck and neck. So we have a sternocleidomastoid down here. I usually try to sort of get a sense of what the structures are in the shoulders instead of just drawing the shoulders, like the outline of the shoulders. So I want to know like where the collarbone is and all that. And sternocleidomastoid, as I said. So here. And so now the next thing with a 3/4 view, I like to figure out like more or less where's my midline here. And then I'm going to start looking at the side plane of the face. The side plane tends to disappear on 3/4 views if you're not used to drawing 3/4 views, and it tends, you kind of end up with like one face, one plane that's facing the viewer. This is what happens to me anyway. Rather than, here we go. Rather than having like a side of the face and a front of the face. So I like to try to nail down like more or less where that angle starts happening here up along the forehead. And you notice I'm using kind of like short, sharp angular strokes here. And in part that just helps me prevent me from getting too detailed too soon. This one's going a little bit better than the other one. Knock on wood. And one thing that's important to do, to remember about this particular exercise is like, it's hard for me. I have to let go of this idea of like, oh yeah, I'm going to end up with a result that looks like my subject. Because it's not really the goal right now. Right now I'm just trying to get a sense of the planes of the face, the main structures. So here I'm showing the cheekbone over here, and then the muzzle, the front of the mouth comes out here, right? Kind of overlaps a little bit and then comes back in, and that's at the same line as the mouth, like so. And have my brow on the other side. Nose line, there we go. Okay, I got 13 seconds, not too bad. We have an eye, like right about here, and we have an eye right about there. Again, snake eyes for everyone. Okay. And so he needs a little bit more chin. I have a bad habit of like having the bottom features of the face move a little bit far down. And so like all of my drawings from when I was like a teen, I look back on them and I'm like, where is the chin on that face? The mouth is like down here. And I notice that that's just a habit I still have sometimes, and I'll finish laying something out and then I'll realize like, oh, there's actually not enough chin on that face. Okay, moving on to the next one. I think this is one of the important things about doing lots of short sketches like this, and a lot of preliminary work, is that you start to find out what your biases are, in terms of, are you more likely to like flatten that 3/4 view into one plane that faces the viewer instead of having a front and a side? Are you more likely to not leave enough chin just by default? Do you tend to put the eyes too high or too low? And you'll start to like pretty quickly notice what your own trends are, what your own habits are. Okay, so let's make another one. I really want to do this 3/4 one here, but I'm going to leave the angle for a little bit later once I've warmed up a bit more, because that sort of foreshortened angle is pretty hard. Let's go back to front. There we go. So I'm just adding notes on my head drawings of like what the time limit was or what the conditions were for each sketch. And get my timer up here. Give myself a little more space. And boom. This guy has ears. And there's a subtle tilt to this guy's face, which I think is really interesting. So it's not a perfect straight on. So again, trying to stay away from features and more going for shapes. Using kind of half circles here to denote that top lid. And then showing, what are the structures here of cheekbone? How does that correspond with the shapes around the mouth? The chin itself. Sometimes what you end up with is something that looks a little bit like the musculature underneath. Really? Hang on, I'm gonna add a little bit more time to that one. I know I said that this would keep me honest, but apparently that's just not possible. Okay, here. There we go. Okay, we'll call that good. That's a fun face. I'm gonna come back to that one. I didn't do the neck. This neck's coming good. improve things. Okay, moving on. Next face. Alright, I think I'm gonna give this one a try. I have a known problem? I don't want to say problem exactly, but this kind of foreshortening, I do tend to lift, when I'm trying to draw faces that are tilted down like this, I do tend to end up with them looking more straight on than they should be. The chin is like the bottom half of the face is always way smaller than I think it is, and so I'm gonna just try to get that. There's this very distinct diamond shape here, and I'm gonna fight my instinct to tilt that face up to make it look tilted up. So again, wish me luck. Set my timer up. I'm hoping that most of what I'm saying is coherent. I realize that as I work with my pencil, it's probably getting less and less coherent, and that's why I'm here. Thanks for being my test subject. Okay. Timer on, and so starting off with this diamond shape, like so. The chin here and here, and the widest part of the face is in the cheekbones, and then the cheekbones come in like this, the nose is kind of here. The reason this is hard is because it follows a different set of rules than sort of the basic face that I first learned to draw, that Loomis face, the head that's either pointing straight forward or like a little bit up or a little down or 3/4. And so that's just how it is. Okay, dark spots, we're just gonna show where that eye socket and that eyebrow is. And same on this side, comes through here. Let's see, this side of the nose and the under side of the nose. And mouth. And the shape of the chin. There's really not a lot of chin visible. I know I was just talking about how I never put enough chin on my subjects, but this one really doesn't have enough chin because of the angle of the face. There we go. Get that headscarf in here. Look, there's no neck to draw, so I'm ahead of the game. Really sharp cheekbone here. Another shadow on the side of the face. And underneath here. This side. There we go. And that's my timer. Alright. And just looking at that, between the screen and my reference, I'm seeing like, I think her face is a little bit wider. So I might correct for that. Ultimately, again, I'm not really trying to hit a particular level of accuracy at this point. But it does really, really help to go back and take a look at what you did and then compare it to what's happening to this nose. My God. And then compare it to the photograph. Just look at them side by side, and then you'll start to, again, notice like what goes well, what isn't going well. And that is one really good way to get better at what you're doing. Okay, cool. I think I might come back to her face too. I'm probably going to do longer drawings for all of these faces, but we'll see. I'm going to do one more 3-minute, and then I think move on to an untimed, more in-depth sketch, larger sketch. Who's gonna be our next face? I've got 2 straight-ons, I've got 1/4 view, I've got a tilted down, could do another 3/4. I really like the highlights on her face. Oh, let's do a profile. Alright. In the hot seat, my man. Phone somewhere where you can see the timer, but it doesn't get in my way. Alright, let's go. So, let's start this out. Often I start with a circle of some kind. This is kind of where that Loomis technique comes in. Big angles. There's the line of the nose here. This is the occipital lobe, the back of the skull. Neck goes off like this. Keep following this line down. We're going to find that jawline here. This is the other side of the neck. And that's going to come up like this. We have the ear between the occipital lobe. I'm just going to add a circle for that. Think of the head. The brow bone, which is above the ear, comes down. The nose comes out, back in, out for the top lip, back in, out a little bit for the bottom lip. Bit of chin right there. And now I can start kind of eyeball it and saying, okay, I feel like there's too much skull there, and the occipital lobe isn't necessarily, well, no, that actually seems fine. Let's go this way. There's not quite enough neck on this person. There we go. So I have a rough profile here, but now I'm gonna move the ear because I don't think that was quite right. Jawline comes down this way, and then let's move that lobe over. And when you're doing this kind of sketching, you don't have to erase, you can just draw over. Got lots of choices. Bottom of the apple there. And we have profiles tend to be tricky too, again, because there's rules for profiles for how features relate to each other on profiles. There's rules for how they relate to each other. 3/4 views, etc., etc. I'm gonna give myself another minute on this one. Okay, so I'm gonna get that. I still feel like I have a little bit too much space here, but that's okay. Everything is drawn really relative to everything else, and so as things move, sometimes I will, or as areas begin to develop, often I'll move one thing or another thing. And while you're doing something like this, you can also, especially if you're not super familiar with just the basic map of the relation of how features tend to come together, you can measure shapes and see, oh, actually, how far is the neck from the jaw? Anything that you're not sure about. Close. So for me, when one of these warm-up drawings is successful, usually I'll see that it's mostly made up of shapes rather than lines. I have a tendency to go for the lines of a face, in part because that's what I need to accomplish when I'm painting. The way that I draw when I'm painting, when I'm going to be painting what I'm drawing, is a little bit different than what I'm doing here. And so in this case, rather than trying to get the lines, the boundary lines between areas, I'm really going for the shapes, the big shapes of the shadows that make it up. Stop my timer instead of giving myself another minute. Alright, we'll call that good. So this is, look at that, 4 minutes, this was 3 minutes. Just for the sake of records, it's November 23rd. It's funny that I'm labeling this because this piece of paper is going to end up either in the trash or forever in a drawer somewhere. Never to be seen again. Okay, so I'm going to call that good for my warm-ups. And this is a fresh new notebook. I got this yesterday because apparently I don't have enough notebooks. And I'm hoping to fill it up with, I did this one yesterday, and this one also. I'm hoping to fill it up with, like, not, about this level of sketched drawings, so not finished, not, like, super precise, but, just get those hours in, get that practice in of blocking out the big shapes, again and again and again until I feel like it comes naturally, or at least more naturally and easily to me, and that is the beauty of practice. When I spend a lot of time either teaching or kind of working on the final stages of portraits, I tend to lose connection with my sketching, with that like initial drawing phase of the process, because I just don't spend as much time doing it. And so something I'm hoping to do, and hoping that like having a nice fresh new notebook will help out with, is just kind of having an incentive to fill this up with those sketches. Let's zoom out a little bit. Feel free to vote on, there's like 2 people here, but if you have any opinion on which of the 5 faces I should start with. I think I'm gonna pick one of those because they're fun. But I don't have much of an opinion, so if you do, let me know. Do her, because again, this is a challenging position, a challenging pose for me because of how much her face is tilted down, and I think it would be good practice. So I'm going to open this in a larger tab, and I will share the URL in the chat. I'm just going to pin the URL on Pinterest, so that if you want to follow along or if you want to use this reference photo, you are welcome to. Oh, weird. For some reason I can't paste. Okay, that's weird. It's my paste shortcut just doesn't work. Okay. I'm not sure if it's /pin or pin/. Doesn't really look like it's pinned. Hang on, I gotta find out. Oh, it is definitely /pin. Oh my god. Oh look, I can do it manually. Amazing. Okay. And then I will keep that there. If anyone is, can test that and make sure it works, that would be spectacular. Cool. Hopefully that worked. hard for me to see chat in my layout though. Alright, let's do this. That looks like most of the photo. Be a little bit cut off on the sides. And so I'm going to start off with, I have this up on my screen, kind of normal size for you all, and I'm going to start off with a second window that I'm looking at, and where my model's face is quite small, like thumbnail size, you know, I don't know, size of my palm or something like that. Again, because that helps me to figure out those big shapes. I take a plumb line, like a straight line, and I go right from her part of her forehead, and I drop it all the way down, like so. I see that her chin is actually like way to the side of that, out this way. So that means that this probably needs to come in a bit. And this line's gonna have to come like pencil held up against the screen just to mimic that plumb line. And I see that the edge of the chin. We'll go with that. Okay. Cheekbones are coming across at a little bit of an angle, so about like that. And relative, if I draw an sort of a cross on the face here, across the eyes, and then down from the part of the hair down to the bottom, then actually, I'm seeing that there's less space up here than I currently have, so that means, I think, that I'm gonna need to bring this line up just a little bit, like that. And I can hold my pencil up and use it as a measuring tube up against my screen, and I can say, from the part of the hair down to right about where the eyebrows are is X amount, and then that same amount from the eyebrows down to the bottom of the nose is that plus some amount. So that would put the nose like down here, and then if I have that measurement, again, then there's even less than that amount down to the chin. Actually, that sort of matches more or less what I'm going with. Because the face, even though it's tilted down, it's not straight on, there's going to be a bit of an angle to all of my horizontal lines. So her nose line comes across this way, her chin line, that eye line. not on the plumb line. The nose is not in the center. The center of the nose is like right there. And the distance from the middle of the nose out to the side of the face on the right side is like maybe 2/3 of this. So that means I have too much on the right side of the face. Not by much, maybe like that much. Big triangle for the nose. At this point, I'll often start getting a sense of like where actually are the eyeballs on this face, in part because I really want them to match, and it's easy to get sucked into sort of placing one eyeball and then you place the other eyeball and then you look at them and you say, oh my god, those eyeballs are not, they are not in agreement. I'll start with a big circle like this because we can't see the actual ball of the eye, but it's there, and so having that structure underneath, understood to be underneath, I think is an important part of being able to depict all the folds and characteristics of an eye. Comes down this way. Cheekbones. Nose. Identify the corners of the eyes. This one's a little bit in. Okay. Cheekbone. I still feel like I might have a little bit too much. Space up the top of the head. And eyes are cattywampus. So this phase is always super exciting because things tend to look kind of like a dog's breakfast. And you have lines all over the place, and you have things that look kind of like wrinkles, and it's very easy to get lost at this stage and say, oh my god, I don't know what I'm doing. But you kind of have to think of it as a scaffolding process. And that scaffold has to go up. This is an exploratory process that is pretty much impossible to make up for if you don't do it, where you're just looking really, really carefully at the face and trying to draw what you see in terms of shapes, not in terms of this is an eye, this is a lips, this is, these are lips and they should look like lips, but instead thinking of things again as shapes. That's a triangle. This is a square. Just have a cheekbone. And then just getting through that uncomfortable phase. It's easy to kind of rush through this and not fully experience what the face looks like, well, those lines are, because you're uncomfortable with what you're looking at, and you want to move on to refining the shapes and to, you know, putting in the eyebrows and making it actually look like a person. You just kind of have to hold on and keep going, even though it's like, oh wow, what am I doing here? This is not my beautiful house, this is not my beautiful wife, etc., etc. starting to expand my shadow shapes here and create soft areas of dark that contrast with the light. And so this is gonna help me to more accurately eyeball where things are. And this is kind of part of the trick of the thing, is figuring out how to help your eyes figure out what the heck you're looking at. And your eyes are way better at identifying shapes, light and dark, than your eyes are gonna be at identifying where is this edge and where is it in relation to another edge. And so once you start getting those big shapes in, it can get easier to see what you're doing. Emphasis on can. And something I would like to be doing in my own work is get better at making those big shapes sooner. I have a tendency to make lines, because that's kind of how I learned how to draw. But the lines can be really confusing. It can slow down the process and can make it hard to figure out where you are and what you're doing compared to big soft shapes. It's just one of the reasons I like working with charcoals, because it's really good for making, kind of forces you into making big soft shapes. The noodly jazz has begun. Not super excited about that. So once I make those big shapes, I can start carving out sections of light inside them. And I'm just sort of gently pushing them more and more towards specific shapes, from general to specific, always working big to large. I will say, and this is one of my bad habits, I tend to start doing this a little bit too early. I'm really eager to start to see detail emerge, and so sometimes I'll start carving out those shapes before I really have everything else in place. And I will tell you that is an amazing way to find out at the end of your drawing that you have put the nose in the wrong place. So I'm trying to exert a little bit of self-control here. So I'm just carving the whites of her eyes out of the dark shadow that I have made and adjusting my little edges. And so her face emerges. And I'm gonna stop here for a moment, and I'm using this great tool I have here, which is I can see on my screen both the reference photo and my own work here. And so I can take a look at both of them at the same time, and I can kind of jockey my eyes between them, and I can start looking at it and deciding, what am I missing here? What's not quite right? And so for me, this is a totally passable representation, which is more or less what I'm aiming for. There's a difference between a representation and a likeness. Representation of a person means it is recognizably a person. The anatomy is more or less looks correct. It looks like a human. And it often will have its own mood, its own sort of sense of feeling. Representation for portraits, and representation is an excellent place to get to. Likeness is where you go beyond that. You start having the very specific things about that person. You start having the expression that they have in that photograph or in the modeling session or whatever. So I like to make a distinction between those two goals when it comes to portraiture, because often we can get kind of stuck thinking that to make a good portrait we have to have likeness. And I would say if you are doing a commissioned portrait of a specific person, or you're trying to paint a specific person or draw, then yeah, likeness is something that you're going to want to aim for. But while you're building your portrait skills, while you're learning how to draw, how to paint, how to represent other people, representation, I think, is the most realistic goal to hit on. Is you want to find something that feels something like that person, but it doesn't have to be exact. So I say this before all to couch what I'm going to say next, which is that I'm going to spend a little bit of time looking at this and trying to get some of the more some of the angles just a little bit more precise. I could go with this and I could continue. This is perfectly acceptable, but there's subtle differences. Like her nose comes out a little bit more like this. And the angle of her brow on this side comes in a little bit more. And I think even the nose bridge comes out a little bit more. The nose bridge maybe goes in a little bit more. And to determine that, I'm looking at the distance between the inside corner of her eye and the nose, and the outside corner of her eye and the side of the face. And of course, this all hinges on me having put the eye, have the right proportions for the eye. Gangle 19 says, I love the angles. Thank you, Gangle. I like the angles too. And if I look over on the other side, I see that this eyebrow comes down a little bit more. It's not quite so lifted. Eyebrows also tend to be one of those things where, like, if you change anything about the eyebrows, it's going to change the expression of the person. Eyebrows don't need to move very far in order to really, really change the mood that's coming across. And so if I lift her eyebrow a little bit more, it gives her more of a kind of an aggressive look, like, what are you looking at? Sort of feeling, versus if I let her eyebrows stay low, it gives more of her kind of like, she looks almost a little, not scared exactly in the reference photo, but like a little bit tentative. It gives her a withdrawn kind of look. So having the inside corners raised will give her more of that tentative look. Having the wings come up will give her more of an aggressive look. And there's nothing wrong with either of those things. Again, if I'm going for representation, I can do whatever I want. I can take this reference photo and I can run with it. I don't have to be drawing this particular model, whoever she is. But I will make a small effort in the beginning of this phase to try and nail down a couple of these differences. You'll notice I don't have a lot of, like, really hard, sharp lines in here. For the most part, it's, you know, it's just soft shapes. I try to avoid putting in hard, sharp lines at this phase because they tend to be really distracting and it makes it hard to see what's going on in the rest of the piece. Okay, something interesting is going on here. There's a deep shadow underneath the nose, which almost touches the top lip. And I haven't left quite enough space for that. want to try to have the eyes in agreement, we'll say. Which they're not quite right now. That means the irises are about the same shape and the same size and pointing in the same direction. Very close. I'll leave that there for now. Something I'm battling with right now is she has very distinct cheekbones, but I don't want her to look hollow-cheeked, which I think is the direction that my portrait is going in. Pull back here, and let's get a little bit more of this head shape, head scarf in here. She's got a hair part that comes down like so, and oh, that's something else I was gonna do. I was talking about plumb lines earlier as a way to figure out if things are where they should be. So I'm gonna align this like so. I'm gonna use a straight edge and I'm gonna go right from her peak of her hair and compare this. I'm gonna use a sticky note on my screen, on my reference photo, to represent the same thing. So straight down. You guys can't see this, so sorry. But I see that that line, the nose is just barely touching it. This comes in a little bit more. Like so. And it hits, just cuts off the corner of the mouth. Like that. Actually telling me I should move this over just a little bit. And then the edge of the chin, which I have a little bit too much of. So this is telling me that if I line up that plumb line, that really the peak of her hair should be kind of over here. And then that line moves straight back from here. There we go. So that plumb line is something I want to keep. I want to establish early, and then I want to keep checking in with as I draw to make sure that things are where I think they should be. And if I, actually, one great way to do this is if I take my post-it note, again, sorry you guys can't see this. If I take my post-it note, I put it on, align it in a plumb line. And I mark on it. Well, here's where that hairline is, here's the eyebrows, here's the level of the nose, top lip, middle of the lip, bottom of the lip, and then chin. I can take a look at it. Now I have this kind of graphic representation. And I can see that all of those features are really about evenly quartering. I can measure it with my ruler like so. They're actually about evenly quartering the shape. So if my shape is, let's see, I don't know, it's like 5 centimeters. Let's see. It's a little under 2 inches. Let's do centimeters. Right, I have like a centimeter and a half. I have a centimeter and a half and a little bit more. And then from here, that's about a half a centimeter, that's a centimeter. So it's like, these are like, if the midpoint of this shape is right here, I'm seeing 4 divisions with a slightly longer one in the middle. So that kind of gives me a sense of what the horizontal proportions should be. And then I can mark that out. I can say, okay, here was the eyebrow line, and here's that nose line, and here's that chin line. I can say, I would say that probably looks about right. If anything, maybe this is a little bit high, like that. And so that's one way that I can check my proportions, and I can help to, one, dial in if something looks wrong. I can start to diagnose what might be going wrong that way, or I can just give it kind of a run through before I continue on to creating more fine detail. Because again, once you make that fine detail, you don't want to have to then move the nose later on after you have perfected all the pores on it. So I'm trying to do that at these early stages. So that's just a tool that I will use for eyeballing sometimes. Let's see, I kind of am having to extrapolate where her headscarf comes in. Although at this point, something I can do is I can measure, okay, we have hairline to top the brows. And then if we go from the edge of the hair out to the headscarf, I can see that, like so, it should probably only go that far. And so once I start feeling like I have proportions, a proportion nailed down, I can start tweaking stuff, measuring things based on that ruler. And now we're taking a step back and we're doing big shapes again. seems about right. Looking at the roundness of her head, imagining what that circle is underneath. I feel relatively good about where things are. Now, I'm going to start increasing the shadows and really filling out the light and the dark. I'm working on white paper here, so that means that my value range can go from this slightly off-white toned all the way to the darkest dark I can get with graphite. Which means that I have to look at my reference photo and I have to say, what's my value range look like here? The diamond of the face is our white value, our lightest value. And then almost all of the face, except for the few highlights on there, the nose, the cheekbone, a little bit of the forehead, is going to be a mid-tone. It's going to be a gray of some kind. And then everything else is actually going to be pretty dark. So, that means if I have like white values in here, I really shouldn't have white values here yet. So that means I start to smudge. One of the biggest mistakes I see with beginner sketching is not enough midtones. People tend to finish their sketch and then they say, it looks really flat. Why does it look so flat? And it's usually because there's a lot of white left over on the paper. And to get rid of that white, you have to put marks over it. But people will see like the light parts of a face and they'll say, I don't want to put graphite, I don't want to put any charcoal on that because it looks like it should be white. So my trick is, after I've gotten things more or less in the right place, or sometimes before, I will just put a solid smear of whatever I'm working with over the whole thing, and then start to carve away white out of that, so that I actually end up with very little true white on the face, on the portrait. And I'm gonna go even darker. One thing you don't want to do here is you don't want to lose the some of the shapes that you have made. So if you have really, really light marks, it can be easy to accidentally go over them during this stage. So just make sure you have dark enough marks, or you're working in small enough areas that you're not obscuring some of that hard work that you just put in. One of the things I don't love about graphite is that it doesn't have as strong a range as charcoal does. I can get much darker darks, but really I can't go that dark with graphite. It's always going to be kind of gray. Another way to get around this this issue of not having enough dark like midtones in your work is to start off with a toned paper. A lot of my charcoal portraits are actually done on this. Gosh, where did I put it? I don't know. It's disappeared. Toned tan paper. So it means that I'm using a white charcoal and a black charcoal on a toned sheet, and it means that I start off with midtones. I can't get away from the midtones. It means I have to do something in order to get away from that. So when midtones are the default, then you end up with lots and lots of midtones. So that's another way to kind of make things a little easier for yourself, is use a toned paper. Okay, let's put some of these lights back in here. Just highlight on the cheekbone. Under the eye. Underneath the nose. It's going to help to define the shadow that's underneath her nose. Now my small eraser is going to make hard marks, hard lines, and my large eraser, if I use it softly, is going to just gently pick up some of that tone, some of that color. Just stamp it like so. And your lights are going to be defined by two things. One, in this stage, I'm actually removing some of the graphite, so that's leaving a light area. But the other thing that will define those lighter areas is adding more darkness. So like right in here, I could lift a little bit of this color to create kind of the lightness that you see on the front of her cheek. But it's actually not very light, so what I want to do instead is I want to add darkness that will show where the lights are. So lights are, you can actually lighten to show a light, or you can kind of draw them in the negative. And add darkness around there, and that will show the light. Sometimes when my finger feels like it's too much of a bulky object, I will pick out I'll use a little stick like this to smudge areas. I'm gonna trim the charcoal from the ends. I don't actually know what this is called. It's like a smudging stick or something? That's what it does. If I put a line down and it doesn't look right, usually because it's not right, but often all it needs is it just needs some, it's got too much specificity. So it just means it needs a little bit of smudging, or to be lightened a little bit. Because we can go a long way with non-specific marks. A non-specific mark, like how much of this face is, it's pretty non-specific. It's smudged. It's big shapes. Will often look more accurate than a very precise drawing that doesn't quite have everything in the right place. Because false precision, the brain really notices precision, and when the precision isn't correct, it says, oh, something is wrong. I will not tell you what's wrong, but something is wrong. And so it'll look off for some reason. But if you leave things like pretty vague, then the brain says, oh yeah, that seems about right. So just one quick trick for more accuracy in drawings is just be less specific. Alright, I'm getting a little bit more sucked into this than I really intended to, so I'm going to set a timer for 10 minutes? Yeah, why not? I'm hoping to get through at least 2 like large scale drawings today, maybe more. And I'm gonna see if I can just wherever I get this to in about 10 minutes, we're gonna call it good and move on. 10 minutes plus or minus. work on a curved, a slanted surface, except the light is reflecting off of my graphite weirdly, and so everything is constantly sliding down. Actually, I'm gonna grab a towel, and that should help. A little bit more friction. Bottom lip has kind of been bothering me. And I've set myself a timer, so I have to live with it. Yeah, we'll just live with that. That's fine. Okay. Possible I may have left her eye a little bit too far out to this side. And that's okay. I will live with it. Something else I want to do with the eyes is shade the top of them. Even the whites. When I was initially drawing this, I wanted to just kind of carve out the shape of the whites of the eye. now that I'm adding detail in. I don't want them to be too light, and they should be gradated. Ooh, something just happened. I think. Oh, you know what it is. Hang on a second. I have to. Something weird is gonna happen. I have to move my alert box. Let's see if I can do this. That may or may not have worked. We'll find out. Next time someone subscribes, I think? I don't remember what that sound was. Whoever did that, thank you. I'm not sure what it was, but I appreciate it. Okay, cool. Let's kind of zoom back out. I need to put in some more darks. And let's fill out a little bit. Oops. Whatever. A little bit of the scarf here. Get rid of that. Oops, a daisy. Let's highlight over here. Nose. I think taking highlights out are my favorite part of any drawing. It's very satisfying. Add a minute to account for that adventure I just went on. And there's really not a lot more I can do in 1 minute, and that's fine. The mouth is still bothering me. I'm not entirely sure why. I think it might just be too small. Often once the shading starts to go in, it makes areas smaller. So things that looked like they were correct when I hadn't put the shading in will suddenly reveal themselves to be not correct, not in the right spot, or too small, or too narrow, or whatever. Let's read this up a little bit, and that here. And then I'll take a big chunky piece of graphite, and then I can start doing stuff like a little bit of background. just want charcoal. Save this for the last stage because if I put this on early, I will get graphite everywhere. It will get on my hands, it will get on the drawing, it will get on my face. Okay, my timer has given me time, but I'm going to spend a couple minutes just kind of balancing this out a little bit. I'm going to put in a couple hard edges that will help to show what is where. Yeah, that math is still really bothering me. I think I just put too much contrast in it. Again, when things aren't looking right, just remove some specificity and see if that helps. Oops. Just got these great shadows of her eyelashes. Okay, cool. We're gonna leave this one right here, which is not to say that it's really finished. I might do some work on it later, but I have, I think, accomplished what I came here to do, which was practice those initial stages. And if I keep working on this, then I'm just going to be practicing more of what I already know how to do and really like doing, which is finishing a piece, putting detail in. This is November 23rd. What else am I putting on these? Let's see if I can find a source for this photograph. Move on to the next one. Something I would usually do at this stage is I would spray this. Well, I'd finish it first, and then I would spray it with a workable fixative to prevent it from smearing, because as I move on to my next page, and if I put any friction on the paper, it's going to start transferring to the other side. It's going to start smearing around. I don't want to do that. So instead of gassing myself with aerosol spray, I'm going to use a piece of vellum, and I'm just going to put that down a little bit and tape it onto the piece of paper, and that will prevent friction from happening and smudging. There'll be a little bit of transfer of the graphite powder, but it shouldn't smudge too much. This is kind of the accommodation that I have found that works. I really, really like ring binders or spiral bound binders because I can open them all the way, and they don't have like weird folds in them. I don't really like hardbound notebooks, but the downside of a ring binder is that there's movement between the pages, and so you really have to fix your drawings with something, some kind of spray, or tape the paper down like this if you want them to stay in one place. Cool. Okay, are we ready to go back to stage 1 of this? Moving on to my next page, and we're gonna pick another photo, another reference to work from. I'm going to wipe some of the graphite off of my hands. And then take a quick stretch break. So if you need to go get anything right now, or take a pee, or take a break, or stretch, or whatever, now is a good time to do it. And we'll be back in 2 minutes. Oh, possibly even less. My knees hurt. So our next subject, I think I'm going to choose one of the reference photos that I used for my earlier practice, my warm-up exercises. Do a 3/4 view. One of these guys. That guy. I do really like the shapes on this one's face. But I'm gonna go with this guy. Very rugged. URL to that. Back here. Oh yeah, that's pretty visible. Maybe we zoom in just a little bit. Now I'm gonna actually use pin the right way. Weird. Okay, here we go. Oh no. Well, I was gonna end today covered in graphite dust anyway, so might as well get it over with. I was talking about where I'm trying to get that mid-tone in there early on. So there we go. We'll get some mid-tone in. We got some mid-tone. I don't like to start with a clean piece of paper usually, unless I'm doing a watercolor painting, in which case, clean paper, please. It's just, it's free weathering. Okay, let's try that one again. Give my pencil a bit of sharpen. Make it so that my drawing is as straight on as possible. The last one was a little bit distorted because of the angle. Alrighty. marks all over the place. Here's. So, start putting things down in relation to other things. Nose doesn't quite make it down to the bottom of the ear. It's close. The ear is more level with the mouth. I say oops as if that one line was so different than all the other lines I have going on here. Pulling out that plumb line now. Might stick my post-it note. Really high-tech instrument right here. Back on my reference photo, and I'm gonna line it up with the brow bone, the right brow bone that kind of pops out there. Trying to get it as up and down as I can. And I'm gonna say that brow bone is the part that extends the most of this face. That is the outermost point. Comes in like that, I will say. And then the eye structure here. And then the cheekbone doesn't come out further than this line here. This plumb line. Comes out almost there. And then back in. And then we have our muzzle right here. Coming out. It's that top lip. All the lip structures. And jaw. Big square jaw. Got a cheekbone, comes in like this, comes down this way, and my line comes up like so, and it kind of comes underneath, like that. The outline of this mouth swoops up, swoops down. Short nose overall. Center line there. Alright, so I'm starting to get a sense of where things are, and so that means it's time for big shapes. There are some people who I think do a really good job of just starting out with a big shape. There's tons and tons of different ways of drawing. Lots of right answers. Lots of different methods. You kind of got to figure out what works for you. And then just, try lots of things until something clicks. So there are people who I think do a really good job of starting out with those big shapes. And I'm working on that. The more I do this, the better I get at going for the big shapes before the lines. But it's gonna be different for everybody. There I am, making lines again. done any kind of sculpting before, this process may seem familiar. I kind of do think about this as like a sculpting process. You start out with a lump of clay, very undefined. And then you come in and you just start making planes. You start figuring out, the whole thing comes out here, the whole thing goes in here. And you have to figure out those big lumps, really, first. Before you can figure out any of the little details. And so ideally, what I end up with is kind of this blocky, sort of sculptural looking shape. And this is honestly, a little bit further than this, is a great place to end this exercise. And I'm being nice to myself by giving myself the opportunity to kind of fill out some of those details, because it's fun and I like it, you know, as a treat. But this is a perfectly good exercise. It's just getting it about this far. Post-it note off the screen. I was like, why can't I see the side of this reference photo? It's because I have put a post-it note over it. Amazing. I'm lining up each structure with another structure that I've already established on the face. Move this up a little bit. So this Adam's apple is underneath the corner of the mouth. The line of the neck starts to come down like right around here. Not quite the middle, over to the side of the mouth. This, again, we're just looking at the sternomastioid, whatever. Let's try that one again. And I'm trying to look at the underlying musculature. Collarbones up here. Already choking on graphite dust. Hazards of the job. Yeah. So since this is this is like a classic 3/4 view here, this one is, for me, a little bit easier than our last one, because I know more of the rules of how this should look than I do when I'm looking at a face that's like really strongly turned down, has that chin tilted down. Okay. Big shapes, big shapes. So this is another detail that tends to get lost on 3/4 views with beginners or people who are not used to drawing 3/4 views, and sometimes myself, is that muzzle structure. We kind of think of, like, look at the side of a face like so, and you sort of see the cheekbone, you see the side of the cheek. And if you keep turning, depending on the structure of the face, you'll often see this front part, the front lip, all of the structure, like the mandible structure behind that, start to come out. And so as the face turns, you start to see the emergence of the mandible. I'm getting graphite all over myself. The emergence of that I'm calling it the muzzle, is to show that I'm talking about this whole structure here. And often that stays recessed, and so people will draw the line of the cheek, but then not really account for the fact that there's flesh that's coming out past that. that's just one of those things that tends to get it tends to get flattened in photos. And so in order for me to feel like I understand it, I kind of have to draw these rhythm lines to help me see where they are, so that it's clear that this cheekbone comes down through here, and it does extend, this line does extend past to the chin, but then there's this mouth structure that comes out as well. And we'll refine that shape as I kind of get closer and closer to detail. But I just wanted to call that out as a particular tough spot for a lot of people. I still have the nose a little bit too long. Something's going on. And another thing that I notice in myself, again with 3/4 views, so all kinds of pitfalls, is that the hidden side of the face will sort of expand. We have this tendency to take whatever view we're looking at and kind of mentally rotate it towards us so that it is more like a frontal view, which tends to be what we're most used to looking at, most used to analyzing. And so I'll often see, and I'm seeing this a little bit in myself too, I'll often see that hidden side, the receding side of the 3/4 view sort of ends up a lot wider than it really should be, because we're sort of mentally rotating that face towards us, and we have to work against that instinct. So I'm gonna move this in, and that in, and that in. This midline a little bit out. And there's a bunch of different ways you can check for this. You can pick a reference point. And you can measure, so like from the forehead down to the, let's pick something that I've more or less established here. Not a lot, honestly. I don't think my hairline is right where it should be. But you can pick a place that where you've sort of established what the length of it should be. You measure that and then measure it against something else on the face. So let's see. I'm gonna make a couple corrections before I do that. Move this out. Feel fairly certain about the length of this eye. Let's take a look at that. Any more graphite on my face? Using my reference photo, which I'm going to enlarge a little bit. my pencil and I can measure. Okay, here's the eye, corner to corner, and I can lay that out and see that the size of the eye, corner to corner, is greater than from the bridge of the nose all the way out to that bony prominence of the brow. It's almost a third bigger. So that means that if I'm gonna have my eye be about this size, then going from here out, there you go. It cannot go this far. It has to go about, we're gonna say that's about a third of the way out. So this with this adjustment, I would say that's probably fairly accurate. We'll see, of course. And then I can also see as I make that nose, that the nose almost hits the edge of the cheek, the line of the cheek here. This shadow here, not like this, we'll say, is a large part of what shows how the muzzle comes out. Shadow underneath the nose here. Start to build out that nose shape. Eyes on 3/4 views. The receding eye is also famously difficult. Which is to say, I've always had a hard time with it. This eye is going to be especially tricky because it's really in a shadow. But that also means that I can kind of get away without including too much detail in it, so maybe I just do that. Can't mess up something that's not visible. based on how far it protrudes outside the line of the head. So one thing I want to do is I want to get this head right. Comes out, comes back in, a little bit of an S shape here. And it's going to tell me where the neck is. I'm gonna make an effort with this one to keep it really blocky. Again, that's really the thing I'm trying to practice right now, and I have a hard time doing it on my own because I always say, oh, but what will a little bit of detail couldn't hurt anybody, and then I end up spending all of my sketching time jamming detail in when I don't really need to be doing that. I need to be practicing the blocking stages. So I think with this one in particular, I am gonna try to finish blocking it out, nail down the big value changes, and then move on. Maybe I can do one more before I end. We'll see. I'm trying to get those midtones in there now. I can start pulling out light areas, but in order to pull out the light areas, I have to have those midtones. Again, bring those midtones out. Okay. I'm gonna pull out the eraser, my favorite. Some nice highlight up here. Looks a little bit like the media teacher in my high school. Can't remember his name. Just around the mouth. Media teacher couldn't possibly have been his title. He wasn't a librarian. He had something to do with computers. And much like with our last subject, you'll see that we start to have a representation come out here. We have someone that looks kind of like the model, you know, you can sort of see some similarities. But still, there's going to be subtle and sometimes not so subtle differences between this face and my art, my drawing. And that is okay, because I'm aiming for a general sense of representation rather than exact likeness. Learning to create likeness is a very useful skill, especially if you want to be doing very realistic portraits of very specific people. It kind of involves a different skill set. It involves a lot of looking at your two photos or at, your work side by side and going back and forth and making little adjustments and paying very, very careful attention to the way that the eyebrows angle and all those little details. It's a really good skill to build, but I have found that being able to draw someone generally too is also a very strong and very useful skill, and very necessary too. If you want to be doing portraits as an art form, and not just as something you do for commissions or so you can paint your friends accurately, then being able to get the sense of someone without having to paint them exactly or draw them exactly is really, really useful, because unless you're selling a portrait to a person, the person that you painted, people usually are not buying portraits of specific people. It is much better to have, to be able to use your model generally as a general indicator of subject, and then depart from that. Use your own intuition and your own understanding of anatomy to go in another direction, so that you're not actually drawing that person. You are letting that person inspire whatever it is that you are drawing. And that is my 2 cents on that. Some lunch making noise coming from my kitchen right now, so I think what that means is I'm probably gonna have to call this I'll call this stream after I'm done with this guy. So my housemates have been very good about letting me take over the common space for streams, but I do not wish to be in a position for too long. Okay. Needs more shading up here. like I'm getting pretty close to where I want to be with this one. Cool. Okay. There we go. Home stretch. Oh, excuse me. So you can see I'm leaving the eyes super, super vague and really just showing the shadow. Makes it seem mysterious. A little creepy too, honestly. there's definitely more work I could do on this, and I'm not going to do it right now. So I'm gonna put in a little bit of shading around the subject to give it a little bit more of a, I don't want to say finished sense, but let's use my big guy for this. Having some kind of background goes a long way towards making something look intentional. Don't want the same amount of color or of value everywhere. I want to have gradient. There's people who make their graphite drawings look really cool. I think maybe by controlling how and where they put their marks. And I have never really gotten the hang of that. Always been the kind of person who just puts graphite down wherever it needs to go without much sense of style. Maybe that will change if I do enough of these. Jan Borsman, welcome. I think those are velociraptors. Anyway, welcome. Thank you. There could be a little bit of texture on this hairline so it's not like a hat. Cool. Alright, I really want more, like, value up here, but, really what I have to do is go eat lunch. So, leave this one more or less here. We'll call that a good, well, a decent example of, using the blocking out method to build out a face. And then the fiddle with it until it's dead method to finish it. Still feel a little bit weird about where some of the how the eyes are, but you know, again, we'll live with it. Okay, let's put a name on it. We'll call it good. This is 2024, November 23rd. Alrighty, if you have any questions, now's the time to throw them in, my one person. Otherwise, I'm going to end the stream here, and hopefully come back next time. I think this was a good exercise, a good excuse for me to spend some time on a Saturday working on my sketching. So,